Now, if you didn't see my video about what caused the crash over the Potomac, go watch that one. But I want to talk to you about the difference between why I have a hard time flying civilian aviation as opposed to military. The very beginning in the military, you have a pilot that is held to a very high set of standards on a daily basis. And he is held to those standards by his peers and his commander and his chain of command and his instructors from day one. Now, what do you mean by that? Well, as an Apache pilot, my fellow aviators were with me every day, watching me every day, and knew when I was having problems, where I was sick, where I was tired, whether I was breaking up with a girlfriend, whatever the hell is going on in my life, they kind of knew it. My commander was also had his finger on the pulse of that also. So he knew what I was doing on a daily basis. He even knew basically where I went the weekend before. He knew how many drinks I'd had. They knew everything about your personal life and how you're interacting and if you're fit and ready to fly. Then your instructor, every unit has an instructor. Your instructor could walk in any day and say, come on, we're going to take a no-notice check ride. And he could check you from A to Z to see how you're doing. Civilians don't have that. They have a annual flight review or biannual flight review, whatever you're, depending on your licensing, things like that. And they're not really held to a really strict standard on that stuff. Now, the next thing about military is not just the pilots, even though the pilots have to go through a long, extensive training. And I know that, since the Biden administration came in, they've kind of relaxed a lot of that. They've kind of pushed through DEI people and all that, which is absolutely the most dangerous, disastrous shit you could do. But those dumbasses don't have a clue. So they don't care about endangering our society as long as their agendas are reached. But that's another story. Now, aviation in general, when it comes to maintenance of the aircraft itself. So in a civilian aircraft, you go fly on a big boy aircraft, one of the big aircrafts, and you fly into a place, it lands, they start instantly deplaning you. They got your luggage out of the bottom, people are scurrying around the aircraft, grabbing luggage and stuff like that, refueling the aircraft, and they turn it back around as soon as possible to head out. It may or may not get the engine cowlings are not coming off, and they're not looking inside to see if there's any oil spills. They're not looking to see if any bolts are coming off. They're not pulling panels off to see if any critical nuts and bolts and washers are coming off. They only do that at certain hour intervals. And if you're at the back end of that hour interval, you could be flying on a plane that maybe had a rivet missing or something like that for the last 100 hours or 50 hours or whatever. You fly into Atlanta, they got to turn that plane around as quick as possible. The pilots walk straight down the gangplank. They don't go out and walk around the aircraft and do any tire kicking and all that kind of stuff, and actual good solid pre-flight like they would like in a Cessna 152 or something. They have other people that do that for them. And those people, who's looking over their backs? There's a lot of times I've flown a commercial aircraft and looked out and seen rivets missing, seen cowlings loose, just all kind of shit that would never go in the military. In the military, for instance, on my aircraft, I had a strict logbook that I watched every day on the maintenance. I could flip back to the maintenance and read all the maintenance been done on the aircraft. My crew chiefs, 2 and 3 and 4 crew chiefs are crawling over that aircraft every day. They basically do a pre-flight before I ever get there. They do a PMI before I ever get there. They do all kind of stuff. They're always out there taking care of the aircraft, washing it, just babying that aircraft like it's their baby. And then when I come out, I do a whole complete pre-flight. Me and the other pilot both will do a complete pre-flight of the aircraft. Every little detail we look at, all the critical moving parts. We pop the cowlings open and look at the engine. We pop the cowlings open, look at the transmission, and even the bearings, every little thing, the different nuts that have the little wax pieces and the carter pins, and make sure everything's on the right way. We look at every little detail, things that are not done on the big aircraft that you're flying in commercial life. So there's 3 to 4 sets of eyes on every time we take off that look that aircraft over hard. And then when we go flying, we also note any little deficiencies that might have happened during that flight. We write in the logbook, we come back, and we get to talk to the crew chiefs person to person and talk to them and say, hey, this thing was kind of shaking, or the engine had just a different kind of whine or something, and they will dig into it. And then you also had a maintenance warrant that were overlooking all those crew chiefs. And then you had a sergeant that was overlooking all those crew chiefs and the aircraft. So you not only had a crew chief, you had a sergeant, you had a maintenance warrant, and then you had the company's advisor usually was there, like McDonnell Douglas or Boeing or whoever is the advisor for that company. They were also their own staff. So there was a lot of people looking over our particular aircraft. So it would have to have a major catastrophic failure for that aircraft to have a problem, because all the super anal maintenance that was provided for our aircraft. Now, that was in the 90s. I don't know what it's like now. It could have turned into an absolute shit show now with all the DI hires and all the bullshit they got going on and pushing people through schools that probably don't need to pass those schools. But back when I was in there, things were really stracked and the aircraft were highly maintained. So, saying all that, as opposed to a commercial airliner, we had about 100 times more attention to detail, 100 times more eyes on problems than a commercial airliner does. That's why I don't like flying commercial airlines. The other thing is the people that are maintaining those aircraft. There's so many, and I don't like to look at people and judge, but you can also kind of look at people and judge. If their shit is loose, meaning their shoestrings are not tied, their jacket is not maintained, they look like a shit show, then how in the hell do you think they're going to take care of that aircraft if they can't take care of themselves? A lot of things, you have to be able to take care of your personal shit before you can go take care of other people's stuff. So that's another thing. So you have to really think about the company that you're flying with and who they hire and how they maintain things before you jump in and just go flying willy-nilly across the United States on, backwoods airlines, because, your life is on the line. I seen a video yesterday of a aircraft engine catching on fire on takeoff, and they had to do an emergency abort, and everybody had to jump out and all that. Was the aircraft, did anybody look at that engine before it? No. It was probably landed, turned around probably 10, 15 times before anybody did a good, solid inspection of that engine. As opposed to in the military, we do a solid inspection of the engine every time. So that's why I don't hesitate to fly on a military aircraft. And do they crash? Yes, they do. And there's problems that happen here and there, and there's always going to be catastrophic failures. When it's time for you to die, you're going to die. But, there's a lot less probability of having a problem on a military aircraft just because of the attention to detail and the amount of eyes and the amount of maintenance that is done on that aircraft. And plus, in the military, yeah, they have budgets, but they don't cut corners, or they didn't when I was in there. They weren't worried about, cutting a little corner here and there for safety. It was always safety first. So, saying all that, that is why, that is the biggest difference between military and civilian aircraft, and why I don't like flying civilian aircraft. Now, if you're at a civilian aircraft airport and you go over to the other side of the field where the private owners have their aircraft, that's a little different story, because number one, the aircraft is owned by a person that actually loves it and cares for it. And he's probably going over it every day. Now, that's not in all cases, but in most cases. And there's also a lot of inspections done on those aircraft, and they're a little bit more attention to detail. However, they're not flown every day, so when anything sits, it gets what we call lot rot. It starts to get rust on parts. It starts to degrade if it's sitting out in the sun, and things can go wrong. So, yeah, I just don't like flying civilian aircraft in general, or flying on civilian aircraft in general, because of the attention to detail and the maintenance and the amount of people that are caring for the aircraft. Anyway, take care of your equipment. Your equipment will take care of you. Go out and make yourself, your family, and your fellow warrior